I used to think I was just paranoid, that I was reading too much into the way Derek looked at me lately. But there's a difference between growing apart and being studied like a problem someone's already decided how to fix. Derek used to wake me up with coffee. Now he sighed when I coughed too loud. I'd always believed if something terrible ever happened, he'd be the first person by my side. But I never imagined that when the doctor said the word cancer, Derek would look disappointed. Not devastated, disappointed, like I had ruined something. It started with fatigue. Then I noticed bruises, swelling, a strange pain in my abdomen that didn't go away. I finally booked the tests after nearly fainting in the grocery store. Derek didn't come with me to the appointment. When I got home that night, I found him standing outside, on the phone. He didn't notice me behind him. "She's just waiting on the tests. I'll be free soon." I froze. Free? I didn't say anything. Not then. I thought maybe I misheard. Maybe he was talking to someone else, about someone else. But the next week, the signs became too loud to ignore. He started staying late at the office. He started locking his phone. He even changed his cologne, a scent I didn't recognize, one I hadn't picked for him. And when I asked what we should do if the tests came back positive, he said, "Let's just wait and see," without even looking at me. When the doctor finally called to schedule a follow-up, I expected the worst. But Dr. Kingsley smiled gently, sat across from me, and said, "The tests are mostly normal. We'll monitor the symptoms, but nothing alarming." I cried in relief. Derek barely reacted. He didn't even ask questions. In fact, he seemed annoyed. That night, I overheard him whispering again, "I don't know what happened. They said she'd get the news today." I stood in the hallway, listening to my husband sound desperate, frustrated that I wasn't dying. 2 days later, I went to the clinic alone. I told the nurse I needed a printout of my test results for insurance. She hesitated, but handed them over. And right there, in black and white, Stage 2 cancer indicators, abnormal cell clusters, flagged labs, urgent attention needed. I blinked. I read it again. The report was dated the day before Dr. Kingsley told me I was fine. My doctor had lied to me. But why? Who would do that? And then it hit me. Derek. He was going to leave me. But if everyone knew I had cancer, our kids, our parents, our friends, they would sympathize with me. They'd never forgive him for walking out on a sick wife. Unless I never found out I was sick at all. Unless he made sure I didn't. I felt cold all over. I couldn't breathe. And I realized I had no one to trust. Not even the man I married. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about every lie Derek had told me over the past few weeks. The real appointment, the quiet phone calls, the sudden tension in his voice every time I walked into the room. By morning, I had one goal: find proof. So I made another appointment, this time at a different hospital. And I didn't tell Derek. Dr. Lillian Patel was warm, professional, and most importantly, honest. She reviewed the tests from my previous hospital and frowned. These results, these aren't just concerning. This should have prompted immediate action weeks ago. I nodded. She ordered new tests, confirmed everything. Stage 2, early enough to act, but not a moment to waste. I sat there, numb, not just because of the diagnosis, but because someone had tried to bury it, to hide the truth from me, for their own convenience. Later that week, I returned to my original clinic. I asked to speak privately with Dr. Kingsley. I said I had a few follow-up questions. I pressed record on my phone the second he entered the room. "Doctor," I asked softly, "why did you tell me my results were normal?" He paused, looked uncomfortable. "We didn't want to alarm you unnecessarily." I leaned forward. "Even though the report said stage 2 cancer?" He froze. "I was advised to take a more optimistic route." "Advised by who?" I asked, my voice calm. He didn't answer, but his face said everything. I had what I needed. I didn't explode. I didn't shout. I walked out with a recording, copies of the documents, and a plan. The first step was to pretend everything was fine. So I smiled at Derek that night. I asked if he wanted me to cook something special. I kissed him goodnight. Because men like him, they never expect the women they hurt to fight smart. Behind the scenes, I started my treatment at the second hospital. Early chemo. Private, quiet. My friend Allison helped drive me. Derek never suspected a thing. He thought I was going to yoga or to grieve at the lake house. Meanwhile, I filed an official complaint with the medical board and hired a lawyer. Not for divorce. Not yet. I wanted to know how deep the lies went, and when the investigator pulled phone records from Derek to Dr. Kingsley, including a large transfer from Derek's account just days before my appointment, it was all confirmed. Derek paid my doctor to lie to me, to delay my treatment, to keep me in the dark. He risked my life just to protect his image. He didn't want the world to feel bad for me, because if they did, they'd never take his side when he left. They'd never approve of the shiny new life he was trying to build with his secretary. The next step? Let him think he'd won, while I built something much colder behind his back. I began leaving small hints around the house, a scarf left over a trash can, stained from my nosebleeds, a prescription bottle tucked just barely out of view, a sudden fainting spell at the dinner table that I laughed off. Derek started to fidget again. "You sure you're okay?" he asked one night, his tone careful. I just smiled. "I'm fine, probably hormones." He didn't believe me, but he didn't press either. He was scared of getting caught. I could see it in his eyes. Not guilt, fear. Meanwhile, I started prepping the final phase. I rewrote my will, moved assets, changed insurance beneficiaries, tied up my account so tight, Derek would be locked out of everything if anything happened to me. I made sure the kids would get it all, not him. And just to make sure, I spoke to the HR department at Derek's company. His secretary had recently applied for a job transfer to a new office across the country, which meant they weren't just having an affair. They were planning an exit together. I waited for the right moment, and it came on a sunny Saturday. Our daughter, Ellie, was visiting from college. I suggested a nice lunch at home, family only. Derek tried to protest, said he had errands, but I insisted. I made his favorite meal, set the table, wore the dress he always used to compliment before all this. He smiled politely, but I saw the tightness in his jaw. I gave him a glass of wine, and then I asked, right in front of our daughter, "Derek, how long have you been planning to leave me?" The fork clattered out of Ellie's hand. Derek froze. "What are you talking about?" He laughed nervously. "Don't lie," I said quietly. "Not here. Not in front of the daughter who will never forgive you." His face turned red. "Are you okay? You're not well?" he stammered. "No, Derek, I wasn't well, but now I'm getting better, because someone finally told me the truth." I reached into my purse and placed the lab report on the table, the original one. "Funny thing," I said, "about cancer. It teaches you who people really are." Ellie stood up. She looked at her father like he was a stranger. "You knew?" she whispered. "No, I thought she was overreacting. You bribed her doctor," I said. "I have proof." He turned to me, eyes wide. "You can't prove that." "Oh, I can, and I have, and soon, so will the state medical board." I leaned back in my chair, calm and measured. "But I haven't filed anything publicly yet." "Why not?" he snapped. "Because I wanted you to feel what it's like to live on borrowed time." I stood up. "You lied to me, risked my life, and tried to run away with someone else while I faded into the background. But I don't fade, I don't vanish, I fight." And then I walked away from the table, left him standing there, red-faced and shaking. He still didn't know about the lawsuit coming, or the frozen accounts, or the anonymous letter that had just reached his company's board. The next week, Derek's world began to unravel, and I didn't have to lift a finger. The board of directors at his company launched an investigation into inappropriate workplace conduct. Anonymous tips, screenshots. An affair with a subordinate wasn't just immoral, it violated company policy. His secretary was transferred before she even packed her desk. Derek was placed on unpaid leave, pending review. He came home that night, pale and trembling. I was in the living room, sipping tea. "You did this," he growled. I looked up, calm. "No, Derek, you did this. I just stopped covering for you." I handed him an envelope. Inside was the official notification from my lawyer. Not divorce papers, not yet. It was a cease and desist for accessing any of my medical or financial information. It included copies of the bribe transfer, the doctored notes, the medical board complaint, and a clause stating that if he contested my separation in court, I'd go public. His hands shook as he read it. "You can't. You wouldn't." "Wouldn't I?" I said quietly. "You gambled with my life. You didn't care if I died. You just didn't want to look bad doing it." He left the house that night. I didn't hear from him for weeks. In that time, I moved forward, really moved forward. Treatment continued. My hair started falling out, but I didn't hide it. I started a blog, a space for women going through betrayal, illness, and abandonment. It took off more than I expected. People related. They responded. They thanked me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. One afternoon, I got a message from Derek, just 4 words. "Please don't ruin me." I stared at the screen and then deleted the message. He was already ruined, not by me, by who he chose to be when I needed him most. Months later, Ellie sat beside me as I rang the bell at the hospital. "Cancer in remission." "I can't believe how far you've come, Mom," she said, tearing up. "Neither can I whispered. But the truth was, cancer didn't break me. He did, and I built myself back stronger than ever. Now I live my life on my terms, without fear, without lies, without the man who thought my silence was his safety net. And the next time someone tries to write me off, they better remember, I survived cancer, and I buried the man who thought I wouldn't."